I am Annabelle Alonso Painter, and welcome to the Universal Business Aviation Ops Update Meetup, your source for what's impacting operations around the globe. I'm your host and moderator for today's edition for May 14th, 2025. For this episode, we're focusing on global operational news with an emphasis on the ever-popular European continent, especially the Mediterranean region, plus the latest changes to be aware of on the regulatory front, and of course, reminders on how to get and stay mission ready and prepared for movements in and out of the always busy United Kingdom, London specifically. And then we'll include pro tips on high traffic events of note around the globe. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, let me introduce you to our panel of experts, and we'll ask them to wave, say hello, and they say hi. First, we have Crystal Leduc, Senior Mission Advisor in our Trip Support Division, helping us out with a global overview of hotspots and major events. Then Nathan Shelley, Assistant Manager of Flight Planning in our Trip Support Division, adding his perspective on ops insights from his unique view at the flight planning desk. Next up, Adam Hartley, Product Owner for Global Regulatory Services, ready as always for a fit check to get you mission ready. For that deeper dive into Europe news around the Mediterranean peak season ops in particular, I'll be welcoming several Universal Aviation representatives. We start with Dimitra Kitakopoulou with Universal Aviation Greece, Gonzalo Barona Jr. of Universal Aviation Spain, and Andreas Braccia from Universal Aviation Italy. And let's round out today's information overload with Jason Hayward with our London Universal Aviation office. It's a treat to have so many frontline experts on hand for today's update. Thank you all for taking time out to join and share your expertise. So let's jump in to finding out what you can expect when you get to Europe. Let's jump into those summer plans. And we're going to start off with that worldwide overview, like we always do, and that means some time with Crystal. Hello, Crystal. Welcome back.
Hello.
All right, good to have you. We're going to start that whirlwind tour. So, Crystal, let's dive in and let's go ahead and start off with Europe, since that's going to be our emphasis for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to start with a rundown of the basics with the Europe peak season. So during our last webinar, we did touch base that there is going to be an increased chance of fuel shortages as well as staff shortages due to strikes throughout the season. Due to the high traffic that they are going to be experiencing, airport authorities will not permit any slot allocations until 2 weeks prior to your arrival. So highly suggest to go ahead and put in those trips in early, but do not expect a slot allocation until we get closer to operations. We want to make sure to plan for alternate options. Use the feasibility IQ that Lewis did drop into the chat already. It is a fantastic, great DIY resource during the pre-planning process for any upcoming trips. We want to also expect NOTAMs for parking restrictions, as well as airspace closures throughout the region.
Excellent. So, what are some high traffic events that may be impacting Europe this May?
All right, so we do have back-to-back events starting this week. So we have the Cannes Film Festival, which is starting today up until the 25th. So I know that some of our operators are already over there. We also have the Monaco Grand Prix, which is going to be May 24th to the 26th. More information can be found on our business aviation planning guide, which Lewis will be able to drop into the chat. The primary airports for these events is going to be Nice, which is Lima Fox Mike November, and Cannes, which is going to be Lima Fox Mike Delta. Both airports will be a drop and go, so they will also have mandated airport slots and PPR. We also have the Pope coronation on May 18th in Venice, which Andrea will dive into later during this webinar.
Thank you, Crystal. Got it. And thank you, Lewis, for dropping in those links as we go. So be sure to be keeping track of what's going on in the chat. All right. So moving on to our next set of events. What's going on in June?
So in June, from the 9th to the 13th, we have the UN Ocean Conference, and that's going to be taking place in Nice. This event is going to be drawing in high-profile individuals as well as businesses. So we do suggest to prepare for logistical challenges, including severe congestion. We have slot limitations, restricted parking availability, as well as heightened security measures. We also want to note that any last-minute changes may result in a loss of allocated slots. So make sure to not do any last minute changes. I know that sometimes it's inevitable, but we want to try to avoid it as much as possible. The flight plan and slot consistency is critical, and any mismatch information can lead to an automatic flight plan cancellation, which will affect your flight. Regarding to fueling in the area, the best practice will be to fuel on arrival. This will help avoid any operational delays, but I do want to let you know there are some locations where they will prioritize commercial flights first. So you may have to sit there longer on the aircraft, but it's better than being late for your departure. There will also be some restricted flight activity from June 7th to the 14th. We also have a guide on our website for this event that has more in-depth details. We also have the Paris Air Show from June 16th to the 22nd, and then Bezos's wedding in Venice from June 24th to the 26th. Andrea will also touch base on available alternate airports later during his section.
Great. Thank you for the Europe overview. Turning to another region, let's go ahead and get up to speed on the latest from Asia Pacific.
Yeah, so as of right now, the Japan Expo is active until the 13th of October in Osaka. So slots are required, but they are very generous. So it's valid up to 59 minutes past the scheduled hour of the slot received. Overnight stays are restricted to 48 hours. Once that 48-hour mark hits, general aviation aircraft must leave and reposition. So our suggested overnight parking options in Japan is Nagoya, which is Romeo Juliet Golf Golf, as well as Narita, which is Romeo Juliet Alpha Alpha. So if there is a required, and you are required to go domestic, there is a landing permit that will be required, and the lead time is 3 days. So we want to make sure to try to adjust those, and they will also require slots. So the earlier we get that information in, we can try to match up those slots as much as possible. And then we also have the Saudi US Summit that started on the 12th and will continue until the 24th. The crew is able to obtain a visa on arrival, but it is going to only be valid up to 3 days. But passengers will require a Saudi visa, so that will need to be done before they depart. Sorry. And then there are no entry forms or vaccination requirements.
All right. And I understand there's a new permit requirement for China. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so for China, China has now implemented a new China requirement. And so this requirement requires all of the aircraft to be registered with the ground handler they are using in China. So as of if you guys used Universal Aviation China on March 1st or anytime like prior to that, you have already been registered with the CAAC. If you have not gone to China, you guys need to go ahead and at least give us 2 to 3 weeks in advance because it's going to take 5 business days before the landing permit lead time to be able to get registered accordingly. So expect a 10-day lead time if you have not gone to China yet this year. So just keep that in mind for any future. I know that sometimes it's last minute, but at least get yourself registered with UV China, or whatever else you need to do in regards to that. Another event is going to be FIA Formula E, which is going to be in Shanghai, May 31st to June 1st.
Great. Thank you. All right. So let's move on to North America. Anything of note to share there?
Yeah, so on the 1st of May, a lot of the provisional waivers for the CDC's air waybill, the requirement for dog imports has expired. So if you haven't thought about this recently, I would go ahead and check. There is a whole process that is implemented so that you are able to receive this. We do have a walkthrough on our website. But you need to go ahead and get your documents in order so that we can continue to keep those tails flying.
Got it.
And then we also have the US Real ID enforcement deadline that was set for May 7th. This is technically mainly impacting just all of the commercial air travelers. I do know that we do have some clients that do more like charter uh, as the commercial side. So we want to make sure that we get all of those details in there. And if we also have a link for that as well. And although it is pretty far out, just to note, the 2026 World Cup will be hosted jointly by Canada, Mexico, and the US. So in Mexico City, it's going to be June 11th, and then July 19th is going to be in New York in the New Jersey area.
Great. Thank you. All right. Then moving on to news from Latin America, the Caribbean, and Central America.
Yeah, so as we already know, operationally, planning is your friend. So make sure to get those parking requests in as soon as possible. Book those hotels once the parking is confirmed. We want to make sure to avoid any cancellation fees, secure transportation for the crew as well as your passengers early, and then plan for alternate options. We want to always keep those options open just in case those slots don't line up. Go ahead and also use that feasibility IQ that Lewis did drop in the chat in the beginning, because it really is such a beneficial tool. It's great for pre-flight planning, and it also helps you choose what location you want to use versus just the generics that we do give you. And it will help just avoid any possible last minute repositions that you may not want.
All right. Well, Crystal was the first one to say it this time. Planning is your friend. Someone
Yeah.
has to start every webinar, and thank you for breaking the seal on that. Thanks, Crystal. And Crystal's going to be with us for questions at the end. And just a reminder, we are going to have those questions at the end. So be thinking about them and start populating them in just a little bit. Give us a few more minutes to get through some more content. Thanks, Crystal. From here, we're going to jump to the flight planning desk. Hey, Nathan. Hello. Good to see you again. Very good to have you with us. So, a quick update from you. Can you share some real world advice from the flight planning desk as we get ready for another busy summer season?
Oh, of course. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me as always, and great to be here with all of our friends all around the world. Flight planning best practice is always hard to follow Crystal. I mean, because she talks about so many things, but I'll be the second person to say planning is your friend, particularly with flight plans, because where airplanes don't go places without flight plans. And good sound quality operational flight plans. So I'll kind of hit some of the highlights. Uh, as far as the United States goes, I mean, obviously, make sure all of your codes are up to date if you're trying to use CPDLC in the United States for picking up clearances. Make sure you're filed appropriately, no matter who you're using to file your flight plans, whether you're doing it yourself or you are doing it with us as your service provider or another service provider. Make sure all of those codes are up to date so you are able to pick up those clearances and things like that. We all know that the New York metro area has been a mess lately. I know there's a question I'll get to answer later on that, so I'll speak more to that later. Plan ahead, be prepared for delays. When you're going into that area, staffing, runway closures, things like that. As we go to across the North Atlantic, be prepared for the influx of traffic that's going to Europe. Again, make sure you're up to date with all of your filing for the North Atlantic because the Canadians love to reject flight plans, as does Europe, if you don't have all your ducks in a row. Uh, Tidbit of information. A lot of you probably know this, but when you're crossing the North Atlantic, for those of you who operate ETOPS, as you know, ETOPS do file in the flight plan. And if you decide to use something in Greenland, little known fact that Greenland will send somebody to sit at the airport while your flight's operating. And then about 6 months later, you'll get a bill from Greenland for having the airport open listed as an ETOP alternate. So not a lot of people know that. We try not to use it unless we absolutely have to, but obviously safety of flight is a huge thing. But just when it comes to planning, know that things like that must happen. So a lot of my focus is going to be on Europe and what you can do to kind of mitigate some of the pinch points in Europe. Europe not notoriously difficult for operating in most of the time, but you need to be flexible. You need to be on time. You need to tell your passengers to be on time. There's little wiggle room with a lot of these events and a lot of these higher volume airports that you're operating out of. If you don't get airborne, the flight plan gets suspended. Then you're trying to get back on file for your new departure time. Plan ahead and try to mitigate those as much as you can. I do understand that passengers show up late and things like that, but there's smaller tolerance at some of these places for late departures and things like that. Be willing to be flexible and go with the flow. A lot of these operators, you guys, your internet or your international service providers are filing your flight plans in advance. That flight plan's good when we get it on file. However, warning areas do activate, airways do close. And as much as those things are tried to mitigate in advance, you want to make sure that you are trying to stick to schedule. And if you can't stick to schedule, knowing that your flight plan, your route may need to change, and to be on top of that and be ahead of that if at all possible. I'll share the anecdotal story of well, we thought our passenger was just going to be 15 minutes late. They weren't able to get wheels up. Their flight plan got suspended. And they took a hour and a half delay out of a high volume airport in Europe. Just again, knowing that things like that aren't impossible to mitigate, but the most, again, we started with planning, we'll end with planning. Just be ahead of that as far as the pre-planning goes. But other than that, I mean, flight planning is normal. Just make sure everything you have equipment wise is up to date. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, Europe and CPDLC logons and things like that. Remember that to use CPDLC in Europe, if you do want to use the ground-based CPDLC in Europe, you have to file the J1 code, but you also have to be registered with OneSky, and that's something that you as the operator have to do yourself to be on the white list, as they call it, or the CPDLC login list for Europe. So if you are required to have that and you're not exempt from the CPDLC ATN piece in Europe, make sure that you are registered with OneSky. That's pretty much it from the flight planning desk. There's no huge big news in Europe right now, but just plan ahead and be ready for it.
Excellent. And I'm sure they all will. And more importantly, they'll come to you when they've got questions, Nathan. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So from Nathan, we're going to go on to the regulatory front and happy to welcome Adam Hartley on. Welcome in. And let's go ahead and get started. Let me give you the con. Go ahead. Get us up to speed, Adam.
Hey, Annabelle, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
All right, so Crystal did me the favor of covering a few things for us already, so that's good. I do not want to talk about CDC airway bill exemption extensions any more than the next person, but it is there available on the blog, so you don't have to create those procedures. You just need to go and put your operator name on them and submit them. Good note, Crystal, about the Real ID. Just because you're not going to encounter a TSA agent in the general aviation environment does not change the requirement to have Real ID on commercial operations. So that's really anything that's covered under TSA's 12.5 security program is also going to grab in those Real ID requirements. I saw it in the chat, and so I'll start talking about global APIS from the Hong Kong and Greece perspective. We saw that those were questions in the chat. Hong Kong for general aviation is live, and as was live for GA as of April the 29th. Universal is up and running and supporting operations through the Hong Kong API portal while we work on a system-to-system connection. Very similar process going on in Greece, where they are standing up some system-to-system connectivity. These countries all were already taking in API or PNR for airlines and are now adapting that information over to general aviation. So Greece is currently in a implementation period through June the 27th. We'll see if we get a hard implementation date from there for requirements. But again, kind of two-sided. There's going to be a ad hoc portal available, as well as a systematic system-to-system approach, which is where Universal is really going with Global APIS overall, is the system-to-system approach in the more than 50 plus countries that require API and PNR, API or PNR for the general aviation environment. UK GAR is going to be our first step here in a few weeks with a modernized approach to how we file UK GAR, and then we'll be talking more and more about that with clients and industry as we progress. But yes, global APIS, APIS just in general, APIS requirements, if there's 50 plus right now, in another 5 years, there will be 75 or more. What we're also seeing with these new APIS requirements, so UK GAR, Hong Kong APIS, UAE, Qatar, are that they are interactive. So as these countries stand up ETAs, electronic travel authorizations, so things that are going away are visa-free travel and APIS-free travel, right? Wherever we're going in the future, if it's international, you're going to have an ETA to go to that location, and you're going to be filing an electronic manifest of some kind, whatever you call it, APIS, GAR, whatever, filing that electronic manifest ahead of time that serves a dual purpose, both informs of the individual traveler who is coming and validates their ETA or visa process prior to their departure, so that people are having more and more vetting. Couple other quick notes, just for those who missed it. EU LISA, we received a new progressive approach schedule. We are looking at October for the EU LISA progressive approach to start, with the voluntary filing of EU LISA information in January 2026, which puts ETIAS, the EU ETA program, on the slate for FY 2026 in Q4. So the end of 2026 for the European ETA program is what they have on the current calendar. The last one I would note is everyone's certainly aware of legacy passenger taxes like UK APD. There are a variety of other taxes that affect general aviation. There's over a dozen other taxes that affect commercial operators in the EU. So we're talking about EU travel. But there's also half a dozen programs that affect private operators. Portugal carbon tax, French noise tax, Belgian embarkation tax, just to name a couple. And these are taxes that your ground handler will not pay on your behalf. These are things that have to be registered for with the member state, legal representation to calculate and pay these on your behalf. So if it's something that you're not currently managing and want to know if you can get your arms around it, or want to know if you have any liabilities hanging out there that are unaddressed, reach out so we can look into it. And I think that's all I have for today, Annabelle. Back to you.
Got it. Thank you, Adam. Excellent and detailed update as always. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to the much discussed and much anticipated Mediterranean peak season advisors that are here from our Universal Aviation locations across some of your most popular destinations. Just a note, keep in mind the Universal Aviation Ground Handling Network is fortunate to have experts across all of the Mediterranean, ready to support missions and supply on-the-ground intel that you might need for your specific trip whenever the need arises. So we only get to feature a few people at a time, but definitely we've got the experts when you need them. So for today, for example, our time constraints are keeping us focused on Greece, Spain, and Italy, Croatia, for example. But don't forget our teams at Universal Aviation France, Turkey, and our newest partners in the Mediterranean, Safeport in Portugal, also on call to assist you with their trip parameters. Most importantly, you can access that information on how to contact them with trip-specific questions at our universalaviation.aero website. And Lewis, if you'll drop that in, because I realize we kind of go through all of this so quickly. By the way, that chat is hopping with information. So if you'll drop that universalaviation.aero reminder in, a great way to connect directly with any of our locations. Now, speaking of our direct locations, it is a pleasure. Once a year, I get to bring on some of my friends from the Mediterranean, and I get to start, as always, tradition dictates, I start with Greece. So, Dimitra, a pleasure to have you back, and thanks for squeezing us in between the delightful, I'm sure, number of aircraft movements already on your team's agenda. I hate to put you away, but no, there is no better way to get your firsthand reminders and insights. So, welcome. Get us started.
Hi, Annabelle. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back here with all of you once more. It would be a great pleasure to have some good news to share for a change, but not this time, I'm afraid.
So, Dimitra, which are the airports that apply specific limitations right now on the lengths of an aircraft stay? Since we're going to get into the details.
Parking is an issue at many Greek airports during the peak of the season, which lays between June to early mid-September. The ones with specific published limitations are Mykonos and Santorini, where maximum ground time remains at 40 minutes as it used to be, and applies 1st of June until mid of September. But there are also unpublished limitations in other airports, like, for example, in Kefalonia, that allows a maximum stay of 90 minutes, or Paros and Kalamata that it's not published, but they do not actually approve overnight stays. There are some more airports like Corfu and Thessaloniki that allow only a specific stay, but there we can get a few overnights. It's not that strict.
Excellent. See, there's some good news sneaking in there. I hear it. So in terms of long-term parking, what kind of options can you offer?
So despite the constant increase of traffic in Greece, we still have some options for long-term parking. The issue is that I cannot be more specific because the suitable option is subject to many factors, like the operating hours, the length of stay, the slot availability to match the primary location, landing permits that may apply. So our ops will explore the option of each request, the options for each request individually. The advice, as usual, is plan ahead, as previously said by my colleagues. And most important, take advantage of the 14 days prior notice that is offered, that applies, because all requests are processed on a first come, first served basis.
Excellent. All right. What about private flight lounges? Any additions to take note of?
No, not at the moment, at least. We still have Mykonos, Corfu, and Kos. These are the only locations for the moment, and the cost remains unchanged at €2,000 per passenger leg.
All right. We discussed last year in brief a new hangar opportunity in Athens. Any updates?
I promise to deliver. So there is no change in that situation. The airline that operates the hangar has still grounded a few A320s, so the hangar is full. There is no space for them to actually offer. There is, though, a smaller hangar operated by an MRO that offers this option. Of course, the priority is to provide maintenance. Just offering space for parking is secondary and costs a lot, but it is an option. That being said, we would be happy to give it a try for anyone that does not mind the increased expenses. Do bear in mind, though, that last-minute change may lead to non-refundable cancellation fees when you're reducing the stay, or worse, being left, having paid and being left with no hangar and no round parking when you need to extend the stay of the aircraft.
Not ideal, no. Thanks. So I have to ask, what is the slot situation in Greece? Which are the airports with low availability? And that could be a challenge.
Okay, so the airports with significantly low availability are Heraklion, Hania, Kalamata, Paros, and of course Zante, which, if we have to be honest, it's just not available. Mykonos does have slot available, but the usual heavy demand causes to experience shortages mainly during the weekends and on the peak hours around noon. A reminder, flight suspension will be enforced again. Flight plans not filed according to the approved slot with the 15 minutes tolerance plus minus will be suspended by Eurocontrol and most probably without a prior notice. And another note here, since we mentioned Kalamata, and as it has become a destination for private jets the past few years, you need to be prepared for some challenges, and you please be patient. This is the last season that the airport will operate under CAA's management. Starting this this winter, not this weekend, unfortunately. This winter, it will become private. Thus, we're expecting some slowly to improve the facilities and on capacity and permits processing. Till that happens, though, I'm afraid we are heading into a very difficult summer season. The airport is significantly understaffed, which results to limited ops hours and no option for extension, and can be really slow on response on the PPR requests.
Understood. Thank you. So there has been a lot of discussion on API submissions. Can you please enlighten us? And I know we had some pre-submitted questions on this, so I wanted to highlight that for some of our attendees.
What to say when Adam comes before me? So, API, Advanced Passenger Information. As Adam says, it's not new. Airlines have submitted APIs for many years now, but it's fully implemented now to all the traffic. Those using a data process software can submit through this one. For the rest, a platform has been created so they can log in, submit the flight information and the passenger data. In order to do so, you need first to contact the system provider and create your known login credentials and gain access. I believe, as Adam says, TSS clients will be able to file through Houston office, so problem solved for them. For those that would prefer to submit this directly to the authorities, I will be happy to clarify the process through the chat and provide the contacts after I conclude the presentation. Just the usual questions that we get, and for those in doubt, APIs apply only to passengers, not to crew members. And they apply also to flights arriving from third countries, not in EU. There is no border within the EU, no passenger information need to be submitted. And it is a different requirement than the PNR submission that also applies. Latest time to submit the API is just before departing from the origin.
Understood. Thank you. So any new procedures overall introduced that operators need to be aware of?
Yes. So it's the famous Athens Airport slot coordination level change. Since the start of this season, Athens has become schedule facilitated. This means that the Slot Coordination Authority has taken over the control of the ramp and the runway. It's a complicated procedure impacting business aviation traffic even more than the previous year, not so much because of runway movement that's, but mainly because of the ramp capacity. What's for the operators to know is that application window opens 7 days prior to the date of flight, but only for turnarounds up to 2 hours. Any stay longer than these 2 hours is subject to PPR, which can be requested only a day prior to operation. Also, certain type of aircraft like the Embraer lineage, Boeing, Airbuses, and the other airliners, because they cannot be allocated at the GA ramp, no matter of the length of the stay, slots can be requested only the day prior, as they are also subject to a PPR. A small tip on all that, if you are flexible to accept last-minute changes, we can book what's available a week in advance, and the day prior we can reapply for a PPR, which would allow for the request to be re-examined by the authorities, this time on the whole of the airport's ramp capacity, not just the business aviation ramp. This would probably not grant us a longer stay, but can improve the approved arrival time if the slot is not initially approved according to the preferred schedule. Also, please do consider the slots allocated when you operate not only in Athens, but the whole of Greece, because I'm sure that you realize that it's becoming more and more strict over the years.
Indeed. Thank you. All right. So anything to add, Dimitra, before closing? I do think you have some happy news to share.
At least one happy information, good information. Universal Aviation Greece is expanding once more. We are opening a new office in Thessaloniki. Till now, we were utilizing the services of a local agent. Now, Universal Aviation staff will be meeting your aircraft and will be taking care of all your needs.
Excellent. See, we got to end on a high note. And of course, once again, Demetra will be with us for questions at the end, like the rest of the team. I know we are very busy in the chat, so be sure to be checking there for answers to some of your questions. We'll let Demetra catch her breath for a moment while we take a tour over to Spain. Hello, Gonzalo. Bienvenidos. It's so good to have you back. So get us up to date on all those wonderful Spanish destinations and the islands. I know you have an exciting update to start off with, so can you start there?
Thank you, Annabelle. Well, as many of our clients know already, I am thrilled to announce that what I believe is going to be one of the greatest milestones for Universal Aviation Spain. Last January, we signed the land transfer contract with AENA for over 17,000 square meters in Madrid Barajas Airport. We are now finalizing the blueprints of an over 11,000 square meters parking ramp and 5,000 square meter hangar. If everything goes as planned, estimating breaking ground by the end of this summer and completion within 12 months. So hopefully it will be finished and 100% operational by early September 2026. This will not only be a differentiating factor as none of our competitors have these kind of facilities, but more important, this will definitely benefit our clients, not only by being able to grant finally hangar space in the capital, Spain, for any kind of general aviation aircraft up to a BBJ, but also secure and avoid unnecessary repositions when the general ramp is congested during peak season, or special sport events such as Formula One Grand Prix, which has been signed the contract with the organization from 2026 until 2035.
Indeed, very good news. Great to see that progressing, Gonzalo. So on to events for the season. What are those big events in Spain to be aware of that could impact traffic more than usual?
Well, currently the biggest impact is based on summer vacations, leisure traffic. But some events that may have some impact are on the 21st of May, the Europa League final that's going to be hosted in Bilbao is going to be against Tottenham and Manchester United. From the 29th of May until the 1st of June is going to be hosted the Formula One Grand Prix in Barcelona. And from the 6th till the 14th of July, the San Fermines, the bull running in Pamplona, in the north of Spain.
Excellent. Thank you. So give us an update on your high volume locations and what should operators expect when booking trips into those airports?
Well, high volume locations, as usual, are going to be Ibiza, Palma de Mallorca, and Menorca. Remember that for the Balearic Islands, slots cannot be requested earlier than 15 days prior your estimated date of arrival. These locations normally publish a NOTAM that restricts overnight and normally only allow a maximum of 70 minutes on the ground to drop off or pick up passengers. As always, we do our best to assist our clients and seek for special permit exceptions, but these are very little. Then, as usual, big volumes on airports close to these islands where, because of their availability and facilities, we normally suggest to reposition their aircrafts, such as Valencia, Alicante, Almería, or Granada. As stated last year, we managed to renew our agreement with ATS and Atlas Air. Both are MRO companies with hangars in Malaga. I know the operational cost in Malaga is higher than the other airports just suggested, but it's part of my job to seek as many options as possible and completely understand that leaving an aircraft parked for weeks on airports so close to the sea may have negative effect to the fuselage due to high humidity and salt. So parking inside the hangar might be a good option. Actually, last year, both were completely full. So if interested in securing some space, let us know as soon as possible.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Peak season parking. Can you please remind us of the parking hotspots and good alternates to keep in mind?
Well, as advised before, expect denial of parking in the Balearic Islands and plan to reposition to Valencia, Alicante, Granada, Almería, or Malaga.
Denial of parking sounds so harsh.
No.
All right. So, any final advice for operators heading to Spain this season?
As I always say, please try to send your handling request as soon as possible. Even though in the Balearic Islands airports, parking and slots cannot be requested until 15 days prior the arrival schedule, it is good to have the request as soon as possible, so at least the airport authorities are aware of your desired dates, and they always try to accommodate. As for the rest of the Spanish airports, as soon as we receive the request, we can coordinate and confirm the slots on parking. So the earlier, the better. And secondly, but also very important, I know it's probably one of the biggest challenges. Try not to change the initial schedule. I know it's not easy, but the less changes we make, the more chances we have to secure the parking slots desired. Remember, once we ask for a new slot or a slot change, you automatically lose your confirmed previous one. So be careful.
Exactly. Good advice as always and very thorough. Thank you, Gonzalo, and appreciate the good news as well. All right. From here, I'd love to bring on Andrea with our UA Universal Aviation Italy team. Welcome, Andrea, and let's get started. What are your thoughts about Italy for the upcoming summer season?
Finally, summer season has arrived. We expect a very busy season. The Mediterranean area and Italy are ready to host your operations, and we are prepared to coordinate all requirements for your aircrafts, as well as connections with yachts and helicopters.
Excellent. So let's talk busy airports and parking.
We expect high activity at major Italian airports such as Milan, Venice, Naples, Rome, Genoa, and the island of Sicily. Milan is always the best option for parking. For those looking for alternatives, Olbia is a great solution, but we can always work on other options based on your needs. Parma Airport, Lima India Mike Papa is another excellent alternative for central Italy, offering various parking options, specifically 2 stands category Bravo and 1 Charlie for long-term parking. Parma is also a beautiful city, by the way, very close to the Ferrari and Lamborghini factories. Many airports have ongoing constructions as they prepare for the Winter Olympics in February 2026, which might pose challenges for parking availability in northern Italy. Be aware also that due to parking restrictions, many airports are now charging a cancellation fee, so be prepared to pay a charge if plans change last minute. If you encounter any difficulties or need assistance, don't hesitate to reach to us. We are here to help make your mission as smooth as possible.
All right. So speaking of smooth operations, high traffic events to highlight?
There are indeed some prominent events that could impact traffic. The Papal Coronation in Rome on May 18th, the Italian Open Tennis ongoing until May 18th, the Grand Prix Imola from May 16th to the 18th, and an important wedding in Venice at the end of June, which is expected to draw significant attention and traffic. Other notable events include Milan Fashion Week and Milan Monza Grand Prix scheduled in September, and again the Winter Olympics in Milan scheduled in February 2026.
Wow, that is an impressive list of events. Any operational guidelines for business aviation into Venice during this important wedding you alluded to in particular?
Yes, key operational considerations include aircraft repositioning because Venice can't accept long stays. We strongly recommend repositioning to Milan after passenger drop-off in Venice to optimize operations. Fuel arrangements. Local suppliers may experience significant delays in refueling, so to ensure availability, please prepare to use different carnet or fuel release options. However, we strongly advise against refueling in Venice. Pre-departure services, all necessary services should be completed before the arrival in Venice.
Excellent, thanks. And then on to a quick note on Croatia.
In Croatia, popular destinations are Dubrovnik and Split. Split in particular has parking challenges, but there are many alternative solutions that we can explore.
Good to know. And then, as always, your final takeaways, Andrea, what do you recommend?
As always, plan ahead for high traffic events. Ensure you have all necessary permits and arrangements in place to avoid last-minute issues. Utilize alternative airports. Consider using alternative airports like Parma or Albenga to avoid congestion at major hubs. Stay updated on regulatory changes. Keep an eye on any new regulations or requirements, such as the focus on the well-known disinfection requirement, and leverage local expertise. Utilize the knowledge and expertise of local teams like us. We can provide valuable insights and assistance to help navigate any challenges you may encounter.
Excellent. As always, thank you, Andrea. And now we're going to roll directly into another part of Europe. Let's get the United Kingdom London update from the always welcome news from Jason Hayward. Much requested and always enjoyable. Welcome, Jason. Get us going.
Thanks, Annabelle. Well, London night slots have been a problem for the last few years, but this year's a slight change. Luton's actually going to have a small pool of night slots, which will run from June 14th through to the end of September. But they just have 100 slots to cover this whole period. So planning ahead, you've heard that a lot this evening, will be essential because airlines also have access to this pool and they really don't actually expect it to last that long. Stansted does not have night slots, but is open till 23:30 local and opens again at 0600 local. Southend, which does have a longer drive from the city, will be open till 1:30 in the morning, opening again, I think about 6 o'clock. All of that information is on the blog, which I think Lewis has already posted in the chats here. So take a few moments to refresh yourself on that. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of changes to processes for arrival. So now you must electronically submit your advanced passenger information via the UK's SCAR system or your friendly regulatory service team. But that must be filed a minimum of 2 hours prior to departure. The electronic authorized travel authorization has now been fully rolled out, and all non-visa nationals will require an ETA prior to travel. The ETA lasts for 2 years, and there's a lot of exemptions for crew, including if you are commercial into the country. So the nitty-gritty is, again, all on our blog, and take a moment to read this. And remember, getting this wrong may lead to a meeting with Gandalf, the Border Force officer, and no amount of wizardry will get you out of fines for repeat offenders. Northolt now has a fast track process on departures for Part 91 operators, negating the need for security. It's by far the closest London airport to the West End and is offering passengers the shortest transit into the city by far. And finally, Annabelle, summer's here in London, and I was dusting off my Speedos at the weekend, and it just got me thinking about weight and the fact that private jets are also getting bigger. And here in the UK, any Part 91 aircraft that weighs more than 45.5 metric tons has to be security screened prior to departure, and that includes G650ERs, G700s, the G800, Bombardier 7500, and the 8000. Now, both manufacturers have weight reduction processes that you can apply. So if you, with a Gulfstream, can apply the ASC 29 or Bombardier's Service Bulletin 27, and you are a company aircraft or a privately owned operator and can operate less than 45.5 metric tons, then register that with your FBO and you can negate security screening for crew and passengers on departure. And if a picture paints 1,000 words, don't be like this guy and get frisked down prior to boarding. Apply the weight reduction processes and strut like a boss to your plane. It's like a Ozempic for heavy jets. Thank you.
I think my day is now complete. Thank you, Jason.
I will send my props to you, Annabelle, by FedEx. Don't worry, they'll be with you soon.
We'll arrange an appropriate trade. Thank you so much, Jason. And Jason's with us for questions. No, we have just a few minutes for our questions, but we're going to speed on through. And thank you so much for those of you who submitted them in advance. That helps us quite a bit. I know the chat's been active, so hopefully we've addressed quite a few of your active questions today during the chat, which will help us get through to the end quickly. All right, so ready. Question 1. This one goes to you, Adam. How does a department find out what to expect from US CBP at various airports, clearing customs, procedures, etc.?
Ooh, I love that one. CBP port fact sheets. So the cbp.gov General Aviation Processing page has a database of CBP port fact sheets, which tell you all of the specific details for general aviation for any CBP. Well, about 350 out of the 400 ports are posted there. So go to cbp.gov, GA Processing, CBP port fact sheets. And they also get sent out to you every time you arrange landing rights. So every time you arrange customs, the port should email you a copy. I would give that to your pilots to review, and always go and grab the latest and greatest whenever you're setting up your trip.
Thank you, Adam. All right, Nathan, we're bringing you on for a quick note on how to stay abreast of anything impacting the situation and fluid conflict with Pakistan and India. I know there have been some changes recently, but what's the best way to stay abreast of that?
The ceasefire right now that they signed between Pakistan and India on the 10th seems to be holding. Obviously, we have boots on the ground in India and have great relationships over there that are monitoring that situation. As far as operators, most of the airport closures that we saw were the airports that sit right along the Pakistan border, and most of the airspaces that and airways in Pakistan that were affected were the J routes, which many of you will know are the domestic routes inside of Pakistan. A lot of operators were opting even before this and avoiding that airspace along with Afghanistan. It's just, obviously it's tricky airspace in general, much less when there's missiles being fired both directions across the border. So most of your operators did tend to take a southern route if they were headed to India. We're monitoring. The situation seems to have not resolved itself, but lightened up a little bit since its first inception. But just keep your eyes open for it, because I believe it's an ever-evolving situation, no matter how stable it appears at this point in time.
Got it. Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that. So, Crystal, we're going to turn to you for an update on the Paris Air Show. Can you update quickly on a few requirements and anything else of note that would be helpful in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lewis did drop a blog for the Paris Air Show already earlier in the chat, and there is going to be an upcoming meeting on the 22nd of May. And so at that point, we will be able to obtain more information in regards to the Paris Air Show and the regulation and restrictions and all of the details that will be put into place, very similar to how the Olympics was.
Perfect. All right. Well, Crystal, we're going to keep you on for a second because we have a couple of other questions. Insights on travel planning for the UEFA Champions League in Munich coming up.
Yes. Okay. So I did get some new and improved information about this earlier today. So there are going to be PPR restrictions starting from the 28th of May, from 0300Z to the 22nd of June, 2200Z. There's not going to be any overnight stays. It's going to be a 45-minute turnaround time for the slot allocation. The airport authority is not going to approve anything outside of that 45-minute slot. And so if you guys are planning to go into Munich at this time, then I would go ahead and already plan for a 45-minute stop and then getting in there and then 45-minute getting back out. And so we'll need to find a parking position during that time. So just plan accordingly. There is not going to be any night operations, so you won't be able to leave Munich after the football game. The aircraft will need to be wheels up by 1959Z, which is going to be 2159 local. And there's not going to be any helicopter transportation available. You will also need the passenger's name, purpose, and as much details as possible if they are associated with the game, because then they're going to be able to be put as priority. If not, that they're going to be kind of pushed to the back, like with trying to get those slots, but if they are involved with it, they want to make sure that they are a priority. Alternate airport options will be Echo Delta Delta November, Lima Oscar Whiskey Sierra, Echo Delta Mike Alpha, as well as Echo Delta Julia Alpha.
Got it. Thank you, Crystal. And then we're going to hop over to Belgium. Question came in. We saw some information that in addition to the online GenDeck submission for Belgium, a separate custom declaration is also required for all flights to from destinations outside the EU, and it needs to be submitted to a particular location. Is this the case for all airports or only Antwerp? We're getting some conflicting information.
Yeah, so I actually spoke to the handler today, out in Belgium, and he said that the separate customs declaration is a national requirement for all of the airports in Belgium. Universal will be able to take care of the GenDeck, but as of right now, the operators will need to go ahead and do the separate customs declaration, unless there's somebody on the floor who knows more information in regards to that.
Excellent. Well, we'll stay tuned for that in case we have someone jump in. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah.
From here, we're going to hop over to Latin America and specifically to Mexico. I don't know, Adam, I know we didn't get a chance to touch base because Adam was working with many clients immediately in advance of our webinar. Are you able, Adam, to assist with the Mexico cabotage question that came in?
Yeah, what's the question?
All right, it is. We've been advised that in Mexico, the scenario when you are picking up passengers from Mexico that you did not previously bring into Mexico as a charter falls under cabotage and requires a special permit in order to be allowed. And the requirements and enforcement supposedly also vary by airport. Um, Wondering if you have any clarification or more information on what is and is not considered cabotage for Mexico because they've received some conflicting information.
Well, using the term cabotage to describe that particular scenario is a little off anyway. That's not really cabotage, right? Cabotage is a third country carrier conducting domestic flights within your country. So cabotage is kind of a misused term there, but it absolutely is still a restriction in Mexico for commercial operators that if you're going to bring somebody out of Mexico, you had to bring them in there. It's not to say that there's not cases where you can get an approval, but you do have to put all of your cards out on the table to say, yes, we are coming down there to pick somebody up that we did not bring in. Here's the reason we're doing that. Here's why their other carrier cannot bring them home, and really put all those cards on the table for AFAC, and then the Comandante, of course, is going to make the final decision there. But yes, that cabotage situation is still in play in Mexico and needs to be addressed directly if you want to conduct an operation like that.
Okay, excellent. And I'm noticing our time here, Adam, because we've hit our hour, and I know for many of you that means you're going to have to move on to something else. But I'll try to keep our team on, let's say, 2 more minutes, and we'll run through the last couple of questions if you're able to stay on, and I'll do so for the sake of the video as well, if that works for everyone. All right, thanks. And I know some of you need to drop off, so thanks for joining. And then Adam, I had a related question, well, another Mexico question, I should say. Import restrictions, specifically on laptops, phones, tablets. Do aircraft iPads that are used for the crew in terms of their manuals, flight planning, does that count in the import total? Do you know that detail?
I don't know that offhand. Crystal, do you know that one offhand, or do we need to go and chase that down from UA?
I do not know that offhand.
Yeah, we'll reach out to our Mexico office and get an answer for that and provide it back to
Yes, that was a pre-submitted question, so we can get it back to the operator. Thanks. And then we'll roll on through a few more. Nathan, what's the latest with Teterboro, Morristown, and White Plain delays?
I mean, don't go to the New York Metro if you don't want delays. No, really and honestly, I mean, the problem is that, when the weather goes south down there and the runway configuration changes at the big three, it creates delays for all the feeder airports. I mean, you couple that with the construction closure of 422 at Newark. So everybody's been getting a bunch of offload volume into the feeder airports, your White Plains, your Morristowns, your Teterboros, and things like that. They've also been going into N93 flow control programs a lot up there. So just, I always say stay abreast of ATC, the reroutes, and the FAA OIS page and things like that, to know what you're getting into. I mean, all of those airports and that airspace is so heavily dependent on LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark. And any type of program at any of those is gonna overload your feeders. So just keep an eye on it as you operate in that region.
Thanks, Nathan. And then also for you, can I get an update on any road bumps with clearances flights throughout the Atlantic?
So the North Atlantic, we're noticing less and less. I mean, since we've gone to the whole like clearance thing and not talking to anybody and things like that, less and less bumps along the way. We'll still occasionally hear of somebody having a bit of a hiccup, but usually that comes down to filing codes and making sure that everything is up to date with your FMS and how your flight plan is being filed. The nugget of knowledge I have here is Canada, although one of the easier ATCs to deal with in the world, and one of the more advanced systems. When you cancel and refile through their airspace, you need to give yourself time to get another flight plan on file, because oftentimes they will reject a flight plan, whether it's a international service provider that's doing that or you're doing it yourself, and then you have to go find the secret decoder ring on why they rejected your flight plan. So just make sure that if you have to change times going through Canadian airspace, that you make sure that you're doing the needful, and just making sure that you don't get to the oceanic entry point or get to Canadian airspace and have two flight plans on file. Worst case scenario, they're different kind of thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. All right. And since we're definitely well past our hour, I want to just touch base with Lewis really quickly, since we have the advantage for those of you who sent in some of the pre-submitted questions. We're going to follow up with those of you that we didn't get to live. Is there anything that was in the chat that we want to make sure we get on the, in terms of the transcript and the recording as an answer?
The only one I see is, Adam, you may be able to answer this. Do you know if TSA will require real IDs for DCA/DASSP flights?
Anywhere you're going to be potentially running into an actual TSA screener, I would 100% say have those real IDs available. Yeah, I mean, if you're complying with the TSA security program, I would say have your real ID available, or alternate passport card, or similar.
Great, thanks. I don't know if anybody wants to try to handle.
Hey, and I would say too on that, that's a good note, Lewis. I talked to Doug Carr from MEAA a couple days ago, and they are still pushing TSA on a couple of questions just like that, on specifics around security program compliance and what real ID means there. So, excuse me, as we get that information from Doug, we will update our blog post and put some information out on our weekly.
The question is, some handlers in the Azores are not taking our flight because they say it is mandatory to have an EORI for your company to operate there. Is this actually true? Are you foreseeing this becoming mandatory through Europe?
It should not be mandatory, so I can take that one offline. An EORI number is a strange one to be mandatory for any kind of permit or airport authorization, so I can take that one offline.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Lewis. And thanks to all of our panelists and those of you who stuck with us here to the bitter end. I appreciate it. But want to make sure we get as many questions in and recorded for anyone that needs to see it afterwards. Thank you again. A big thank you for joining. I know it's been a few months since we got together at the beginning of the year, and look forward to seeing you hopefully again by September when we kick off for the fall. Our Universal team, I wanted to note, does, and many members of the team here, Gonzalo, Dimitra, Andrea, are all going to be at eBase next week in Geneva. So if you are attending that, please visit us at booth 776. So look forward to hearing how that show goes. You can always drop me a note at operationalinsight@unipway.com with any topics and burning questions you think you think might make great webinar topics, and let me know what guests or experts you'd love to see on with us as well. I owe many of our programming ideas to you, so thanks. Take care. Good to see you all, and bye for now. Look forward to next time.